And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's Maternity and Midwifery Hour. And my name's Sue MacDonald. I'm the curator for the Maternity Midwifery Hour and the Maternity Midwifery Festivals, and it's my pleasure to be sitting here chairing this evening's Maternity and Midwifery Hour, which is going to be slightly different. We like to keep it a little bit contemporary, a little bit different, and I'm delighted because I'm being joined by two lovely guests, Professor Lesley Page, who many of you will know, and Clare Wardhaugh, who some of you will know, but maybe not as well as you're going to get to know her soon. Now, as we always do with our guests, we always put them on the spot to ask them to share with us a moment of the week, just to bring us to, just so they're normal people, just like you and I, and have lovely things that happen and special things that happen. So can I put you on the spot first, Lesley, and ask you to share your moment of the week?
Yes. Well, I've got quite a dramatic moment of the week. So it's lovely to be here. I've had cataract surgery in both eyes over the last few weeks, and I had cataract surgery in my left eye, and it was all meant to be straightforward, but actually I had really frightening complications.
Oh, gosh.
And they were treated appropriately. And today I had an examination and everything is all right. There's no harm done. And I've got nearly 20/20 vision in my left eye, and I can see colours clearly. So that was a really big event for me. And I can actually see really well without my glasses.
Wow. That's so fantastic. That is really magical, and you realise how important the eyes are.
Oh, yes.
Oh, fantastic. Well done, Lesley, and hurrah for you. 20/20 vision. So you're going to have to drop the glasses soon.
Yeah, I have to. I'll always have to wear them for reading, but that's fine.
Okay, well, fabulous. Now, how about Clare? Do you have a moment of the week you can share with us?
Well, I do actually happen to do, but one of my moments of the week is actually hearing that Lesley is fine and she's well and all's going well. So that is a moment of the week for me. But my moment of the week has been that I go for walks about twice a day, and I live in East Lothian, which is just outside of Edinburgh in Scotland. And I walk round a bird sanctuary, and I walk along the Firth of Forth. And I was walking along there, and it actually happened this morning, and a seal just popped its head up out of the water, and it just kind of looked around to get directions and all the rest of it. And I was so chuffed, it kind of took my breath away. And I was walking along and I bumped into my window cleaner. So I was able to share with him what I'd just seen and everything. So it was really quite a special moment, seeing this little wild animal just being who it's meant to be in the wild. So it was lovely. That's my moment.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, that's lovely. There's three moments to share. And how lovely, Clare, one of your moments is with Lesley's well-being. That's lovely. And that kind of sums up what you're going to be talking about a little bit later. So I'm going to do my usual thing of just moving from the speakers for a moment. We're coming back. Don't worry, we've given them lots and lots of time to talk this evening, because it's a really important area we're going to be looking at. But I'm just going to remind everybody, those of you who are new, and if you are, welcome. It's lovely to have you with us. If you're a regular person watching, welcome also. It's lovely also to see you. Just to remind people, we were born in the pandemic lockdown. When the lockdown happened, we knew we had to make sure that midwives and student midwives had some way of connecting with each other and getting information. And if you can remember those early days, early weeks, it was a very scary time. And it's kind of, at the moment, because of the COVID inquiry, I think we're being reminded of some of those experiences. We have to be sensitive that for many people, it's going to be very painful remembering that time. It's uncomfortable for many of us to remember and kind of remember how scary it was and how desperate we were all for information and to know what we should be doing, how we should be providing services, and also to keep our continuing professional development up and make sure that we knew what was happening. So this came about, and we started with a weekly program, and we've carried on. We're supported by Netflix, who make sure everything's recorded. So again, for those of you who are new, everything is recorded, which means if you miss something or something happens at home and you have to go away and you can't finish the program, you can return to it. You just need to go to the Netflix page and find it. And there is a massive information there, huge amount of information. If you're doing a project, or if you're doing a dissertation, or you're doing any theoretical work, or for you midwives in the UK, if you're doing a bit of a revalidation, this is a fantastic resource to just make sure you're really up to date and have a reflect on what you're listening to and record things. And it's all free. If you want things that are a bit more targeted, you can have the box sets. And those are curated by a lovely Dr. Jenny Hall, who adds a sprinkling of magic really to the box set she does. And that's a little bit more focused, and there's lots of little extra activities, and there's a small subscription for that. And if you're in an institution who's subscribed to Netflix, you can get access to that for free because your institution have paid, hopefully. Worth getting for your institution, that's for sure. Now, the other thing is, we love you to share these things. So if you're watching for the first time and you're thinking, gosh, this is really interesting, find the recording afterwards, share it with your colleagues, have an opportunity to discuss with your colleagues about what you're learning and what you're hearing, because that's very important. And we know that midwives love to share, and they love to talk and share what they're learning as well. And it helps kind of clarify in your mind what you're learning about, and also how you can apply it to practice, which I'm kind of going back a bit to revalidation, but also really making a most of what we learn and putting it into practice. And I think while we're looking at things like love and humanising maternity and midwifery, that's really crucial, because we need to learn and apply it to what we do on a day-to-day basis. So that's your homework. Now, just want to say again, a big thank you to our maternity staff, our midwives, our student midwives, our doulas, maternity care support workers, for all the work you're doing. It's a hard time at the moment, as always. It's a stressful time, and it's busy. It always seems to be busy. Whenever I go to the local maternity unit, it's always busy. So a big thank you to you. And the other bit of homework you've got is to look after yourselves. Just as you look after the women and the babies and the families, look after yourself just half as well as you look after them, and you'll be doing okay. So that's for there. Now, just on news, the Gaza and Israel issue is still going on. It's terrible to listen to and hear the pain and the awfulness of things that are happening there. We're hoping that there's going to be some relief from that, first from hostages being released, and also a ceasefire. Whether it's temporary, we hope it's much more than temporary and to become permanent, and that there's lasting peace in that part of the world. But it's going to be very difficult, I know. We're coming to the end of November for Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, so there's still events going on, so do keep an eye out for that. 25th of November, interestingly, is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and it does seem every day there seems to be something that's happened. A woman's been attacked, or the woman's been killed. Oh, I wish this could be the end of it. So maybe we need to celebrate that and really work towards it. Busy week here. We've had the student experience, our own maternity and midwifery forum, and the educators festival last week, really good. And we've got also, I need to raise, there's a great big fantastic opportunity coming up for band 6 and 7 midwives from ethnic minority groups wanting to develop their leadership skills, and this is coming up from the 4th of December to the 15th of January. I have to put it on my bit of paper so I don't forget it, from Capital Midwife. So look out for that, because that's going to be a great opportunity for midwives. There's also interesting, the BBC 100 Women, and congratulations, there's a midwife on that 100 women list, and she's called Neha Mankani. So if there's any Pakistani midwives there, listening, celebrate this wonderful midwife who set up a mama baby fund providing care to 15,000 flood affected families and really made a difference in her locality. Fantastic. Also look out for the Maternal Journal free podcasts, and that's our lovely Laura Godfrey Isaacs, who is very arty and wonderful, really good sort of experience to go and look at the podcast. It makes you think in a different way, and that's always a good thing. Also, there's a new publication out, and this is Amanda Burley, Jenny Wylam et al. Saying no to bullying. I think there's a hashtag, say no to bullying, and that's just out, and it'll be well worth reading because it's a very important issue. You kind of think we should be at the end of bullying in midwifery, but it just keeps on, and it's there, and we need to address it. We need to be strong on it. And of course, today in the UK, we had the budget it's not a budget, it's a financial statement. And if you need to look at what is in there for midwifery or midwives or student midwives, I'd have to say there didn't seem an awful lot. But if you look at the resources list, there's a little tag into Martin Lewis, who most of you will know as an expert on money matters and really getting the most out of money issues for ordinary people just like us. So have a look at that. Now, it's almost exactly 10 past, maybe a minute or two later, never mind. We're looking this evening at love and humanising childbirth. And you'll remember a few weeks ago, we were looking at love and what's love in midwifery and maternity with Diane Menage and Jenny Patterson. And this is a kind of another bit in the story. And I'm so pleased to be able to welcome our two wonderful guests they're busy. I mean, they already shared with me, they're doing a lot of talking, which is, we love to do, don't we? But also they're doing thinking and they're doing writing. They're preparing a fantastic chapter, and which I know they're going to share with you. So the first person I'm going to introduce, known by many in the midwifery world, Professor Lesley Page, CBE. She's got very well known about her wish to humanise childbirth and supporting pregnancy and birth in the early weeks of life, seeing it as very much a transformative event, critical to our future, absolutely. She was the president of the Royal College of Midwives until 2017. She's had loads of international experience, and if you get her talking about anything international, she is just wonderful to listen to. She's worked all over the world. She's travelled all over the world. She's lectured. Fantastic. She was the first professor of midwifery in the UK at Thames Valley University and Queen Charlotte's. She's visiting professor at King's College and adjunct professor at the University of Technology in Sydney and Griffith University. In 2014, she was made a commander of the British Empire, quite rightly so, for services to midwifery, and in 2021 received an honorary PhD in midwifery from the University of Iceland. And Clare Wardhaugh, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Clare. She's a woman, I love this, she's a woman of Scottish descent. She's originally qualified as a teacher in PE. She's been a teacher, she's managed ATCs in social works departments, and worked with adults with mild to severe learning disabilities. She joined a religious community and began an apprenticeship as a spiritual director, then completing her master's in pastoral studies. She then qualified. I think Clare is what you could say a lifelong learner here. She qualified as a person-centred counsellor, where she practiced in a GP medical centre and a community initiative for women in a socially deprived area in Edinburgh. She's worked to integrate faith and life in Scotland, post-communist Lithuania and Croatia following the Balkans War. And after leaving her religious community, she went on to teach in a secondary school in Edinburgh, and then has really developed her understanding of authentic and reflective lived spirituality, and has started writing about her experiences. That's going to be some book, I reckon. She also continues with celebrancy from her home in Edinburgh. So we're going to have, it's really a conversation between Lesley and Clare, which we as the audience are going to be very much part of. Now, if you have any questions for Clare or for Lesley or for both of them, just go down on their screen and just post it in the chat, and it'll come through when they've finished their chat, and we could kind of continue the discussion. You can be part of it. So welcome to Lesley and Clare. The screen is yours.
Sue, thank you so much. You were talking earlier about what we're seeing, the violence around the world, and I remember a chief police officer in Glasgow giving a talk, and he said that one of the most important things that we can do to prevent violence is to support parents in their attachment to their baby. And I think that that probably shows the power of love. Well, first of all, it's a great pleasure to be here, and it's a real pleasure to be with Clare. And in a moment, we're going to start a conversation, because I was introduced to Clare to write a chapter for the book that you've talked about. And her insight, her kind of theological and lived experience of spirituality and of love has really helped me in my thinking about the place of love in our lives, and in my life, and in midwifery. But what I want to say is, I know that a lot of you working in the maternity services at the moment will be having a really tough time. And some of you will be working against the odds. And we don't want to make this like an ideal and that you have to achieve. It's really much more a matter of reflection and thinking and perhaps talking to each other. Clare might think about this a little bit, because none of us do it right. And I look back at my life and I think, oh, why did I do that? Why didn't I do that? Why did I say that? So we don't want to make this something that's an unreachable goal. We want you to think about what you're doing and the nature of love for you and in your practice. And before we start, I want to ask you, if you have a story about the use of love or the experience of love or love in your practice or in your life, would you please email it? And the email to send the story to will be on the resource list. So what I want to start with before Clare and I start our conversation is a brief explanation of what humanizing childbirth is. And what we must remember is that love is of vital importance, and that the time around birth is a critical and sensitive period. And so it's sensitive to the experience of love, forming attachment, and it's foundational to a healthy life, well-being, productivity, loving relationships, and a prerequisite for survival. So it isn't a soft thing, it's absolutely crucial to health and well-being in the long term. And it's a test bed for all the other attachments he or she, the baby, will have in the future. And in humanizing childbirth, we recognize that childbirth is a time of promise and potential. It's a time of infinite possibilities. There is a possibility of the growth of love and optimal health and well-being into the next generation. There's hope for the best, or at least a better chance in life. There's a possibility of joy, delight, ecstasy, even when the world is turned upside down in this profound life transition, with physical and psychological change, changing family roles, and the exhaustion, chaos, employment problems, survival, money problems, and housing worries that often mark parenthood. Humanizing childbirth helps keep that promise and fulfills that potential. It enables the transformative and humanizing effects of birth to individuals, the family, community, and wider society. And that broad idea of humanizing childbirth has been developed by me and many others, including Sue Down, Jane Sandel, and Carmen Power, who I've worked with intensely to identify what humanizing childbirth is. So we want you to think about this broad definition of humanising childbirth through our conversation. But what I think we want to start with, Clare, is seeking a clearer idea of love, what it is, what it does. And Clare, in my conversations with you, you've talked a great deal about love as practice, not inbuilt skills, but skills that have to be learned. And I had never thought about it like that. And I think it'd be really helpful if you could tell us a little bit about what love as practice is and what those skills are.
Well, first of all, I would like to say how privileged I am to be in the company of midwives and to be working alongside yourself, Lesley. I come from a very different discipline, so my focus is quite different, and I've been learning so much. But I think what you were talking about, love being practiced, it's something that I'm continuing to do and will do till the day I die. I think love is a potential that is actually born within us. It's like any other potential that we have. It's something that is innately part of being a human, is the capacity to love. I think we seek love. We just are drawn to love. And we learn how to love through our primary caregivers. So when we actually become aware that we are not the centre of the world, we then understand that we've got to be told how to share, how to say we're sorry, how to ask for forgiveness. And those are all components of what I would understand to be love. So love is a skill that needs to be learned, as with the likes of reading and writing, all the academic skills, all the musical skills, all the artistic skills, all the physical skills, that all have to be taught and nourished, first of all by primary caregivers, and then by educationalists. And that is taught. What I feel happens is that carries on, but the skills of love, compassion, and empathy, we just kind of end up having to pick up by ourselves or through osmosis. And I think that's the difficult thing. And I think over the centuries, the religions have actually given us a very good toolkit. All the traditional 6 religions, major religions of the world, have given us a wonderful toolkit of how to actually live a fulfilled and loving life. So in the Eastern traditions and Buddhism, you would have the Eightfold Path, which gives a very, very logical way of working out how to actually live your life as best you can for others. And in the Christian traditions, they talk about nurturing faith, about giving hope, and about the use of caritas, which is love in action. But all of these world religions always have a period of novitiate or learning that can last from anything from 2 to 7 years. So it's a long period of learning that can go on if somebody is committing themselves to this. And I like to think of learning how to love. It's a bit like when we learned how to drive a car. We got into the car and we thought, oh, bloody hell, what am I doing here? I've got the steering to think about. I've got all the road awareness. I've got the gears to change. And we have to learn over time how to do each one. So we start off very, very slowly. And then it all eventually, once we become confident, once we've learned those skills, it all comes together. That in fact we can learn to drive a car safely. And I think it is with love as well. We've got to learn how to be present. We've got to learn how to keep all those aspects of love, which there are many, which I think we'll go on to discuss, how to keep them all in tune with each other with integrity, so that we can be authentically giving love anyway. And it's a bit like, sometimes I know for me, my actions can be loving, but my presence can be so agitated that in fact any love coming over is absolutely rooted out because I'm so agitated and anxious. So it's about, for me, it's certainly about learning how it all goes together.
Claire, one of the things that you said that I think is really interesting is that we learn from our caregivers. And of course, one of the problems is that some people have caregivers, their mother or other caregiver, who can't love. And so, in fact, they don't learn from those caregivers. And also, one of the points of the beginning of love is around the time of birth, the sensitive period, the kind of physiological basis of love and the experience of giving birth lead to love of the baby and the baby loving the mother and the parents. So what do you say about that? Because that must kind of put you on the back step in terms of loving behavior. And the other thing is, I think that sometimes it's difficult to talk about love and the practice of love, and we become defensive because we know that we haven't done our best. I mean, all of us who've been parents must think, oh, I wish I had done things differently. I wish I had known more. So what about those people who don't learn love from their primary caregivers in the early years of life? Very relevant to midwives.
Yes, most definitely. I mean, that's where it obviously it starts. I think what we are offered is the opportunity of a life to learn. And we learn from other people, not just our primary caregivers. We may be at a disadvantage if our primary caregivers have not given us love, have not surrounded us with the nurture and the care that is so inherent in the loving relationship. But that child may eventually bump into love in some point of the world, in some point of their life, and they will learn from that. I also understand that, certainly from some of the work that I have done, is that people will at times work in opposition to what they've received. That in fact, if they're reflective people, then they will think, that's how I was treated. I don't want to be treated like that. And they then go on to develop their own sense of love. And I think it gets back to that inherent skill, capacity that is actually born within us to actually seek out love, to recognize love, and to then be drawn towards it. So I don't know if that kind of answers any of your questions at all, or...
It does. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the role of professionals in supporting the growth of love and actually supporting caregivers who might be having difficulty because they themselves haven't received love. And in the resource pack that you've got, you'll see the reference for this book, The New Midwifery. And I wrote a chapter together with my friend Barb Mills, who was a child psychotherapist. And we wrote a chapter called The Growth of Love and Commitment. And one of the things that we proposed for midwives is that midwives actually care and respond to the woman's needs sensitively, modeling the care that the woman, the mother, will give to her baby. so she knows what it's like. And of course, that's helped a great deal by continuity of carer and kind of consistency in forming a relationship. But also I can think about social workers actually modeling that kind of sensitivity to the needs of the other person. So I think particularly because we're talking to midwives, the potential actually of working with love, and I think we need to talk a little bit about the kind of language we use and the definition in a moment, might be an entry point to people who haven't received love in their lives or who live in extreme poverty. Would you think that that would be the case?
I would think most definitely that is the case. And if you are receiving, and I know we will talk about what we can mean by love, which can be many different things, but if you are receiving that warmth and that care, that is your door open to the possibility.
Yeah.
And once that is given, then you're off. You recognize it because you've felt it.
I love that idea of the door opening.
Right.
Opening the door. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. I remember well hearing the story of a woman doctor who'd been caring for a woman in labour. And the woman had said that she thought she couldn't go on in labour. And the woman doctor brushed her hair, and the woman said, and actually it brings tears to my eyes, I heard this story years ago, and the woman said that she brushed her hair with such tenderness that she felt that she could go on. So sometimes there are small actions, I think, that convey a sense of love. But I think we're also talking about more consistency of demonstrating this sensitivity to individual needs and having the person feel what it's like and to have them as the center of care, the kind of person who's being cared for would be really important. It's an opportunity. So I mentioned earlier, we've talked a lot about the definition of love, because I think we get confused, don't we, between the different kinds of love, particularly romantic love. And I wonder if you could tell us about some kind of different definitions of love, and with a particular view to midwives or professionals.
Yeah, I also love that example of the sensitivity to each individual. And I think that is a huge part of love. And I think it's the capacity that we need to actually grow in ourselves and the confidence to be able to respond to different people for different needs. But I think there's many different facets to love. And I work in images, I work quite visually. So the image I have of love is like this most beautiful cut diamond that just radiates off different colors and streams of colors. And that the radiation of the different colors are the different facets that belong to love. But love is the diamond. And I think that's kind of, I think it's important to actually get something in your mind of what it's not as well. And I think the love that we're talking about, although I'm very happy to be contradicted, is not the kind of love that we have of saying, oh, I love my new car, or I love my new washing machine, or oh, see that chocolate bar that I just had, oh, I just love it. That is the kind of love that we're not talking about, because that for me is, well, they're brilliant. It's very self-gratifying. The kind of love I think we're talking about here is the kind of love that is outward going. It's altruistic, not perhaps the best word, but it's an altruistic flowing of energy towards another person. It's something that is rooted in a deep belief that you have, that you want the best for the other. regardless of sometimes what is going on inside of you professionally. And I think that is the kind of love that we're talking about, one that transcends our need for self-gratification, one that actually seeks to enhance the other's growth, development, fulfillment as a human being. And as I say, there are many facets like compassion, care, empathy, sensitivity. It's endless. It's absolutely endless. And, you know, you could just literally get bullet points of what it contains, but it's all contained within that one diamond that is out for the other's goodness and well-being.
Oh, it's such a lovely image, this diamond and all the facets and light bouncing off the diamond. But I can imagine people out there listening to us and saying, oh, this is all very well, but, you know, I'm working in a situation where I'm not loved and I don't have enough time to spend time with each individual woman and family and baby and so on. And so if we think about altruistic love, isn't that something that's going to lead to burnout, to moral distress, to psychological difficulties for midwives who are actually working in systems of care that aren't loving systems? And we probably don't have time to go into it, but at some point, I think we need to think about loving systems of care. But what about this idea of midwives being loved by those they work with, those who lead them, and so on? And how can we prevent this moral distress, PTSD, psychological problems?
I think when it comes to burnout and distress, it is, as you've just very clearly said, it's lack of the real love by a system, or perhaps by an individual that we are having to work with. And I worked in education, worked in secondary schools, so I certainly understand where there was level of pressure there, that in fact the system completely burnt me out, and I had to do an awful lot of repairing. And I think burnout can be either physical exhaustion because you're being asked for too much, you just too much is being demanded of you, or as in my case at a couple of points in my life, anxiety and depression came about because I was actually being asked to do what I felt I wasn't competent or confident to actually do. And that caused me a great deal of distress. So I think we have to take great care of the people coming into professions, to actually look out that, in fact, again, sensitivity towards a learner, learning how to do the job, how to do the skills, the medical skills of the job, let alone how to love somebody. That's your foremost is on when you first come into a post, surely your foremost is on getting the job done adequately and properly. And then you can actually develop the I don't know, the components of love. I also think that systems, there's, I think we had spoken about this at some point, there's systems and they have different kinds of energies in them. And I believe that we are all made up of different kinds of energies within ourselves. And if we look at the universe, we see two very, very powerful energies at work there. We see the energy that is growthful, that is expansion, that is life-giving, that creates environments where worlds can actually be created and life can be promoted. But we also have black hole systems which suck things towards them. They then, when they're going into a black hole, they elongate them and then they take them into, suck them into nothingness. And I think sometimes I feel and have felt in some of the systems I've worked in, I can only assume that it can be similar in midwifery. I've worked in black hole systems where I have been stretched to the point that I no longer recognize myself. And then in that, I have no longer the strength to actually stand up for what I value. And then I get sucked into the black hole of nothingness and destruction. And I think when we've got that kind of system, I think we then need to look at what is burnout all about. It's loss of connection, it's loss of shared values, and it's a loss of sense of belonging to a group, which is all human needs. And I think we need to find ways in system to promote how do we connect, how do we have forums for shared values, how do we have a sense of belonging, and also self-care. I mean, I could go on forever and we don't have time, so yeah.
Well, I think it might be worth us speaking briefly, Clare, about self-care, because Michelle O'Don, who wrote the book Scientification of Love, talks about love for others, love of self, and love of the earth. And love of self is really important. And you and I had a little bit of a conversation about self-care. And I think it might be worth just speaking very briefly about midwives, because I certainly have had that sense of being pulled into a black hole, of having all of the energy sucked out of me through trying to transform organizations. I've had opposite experiences as well, and there'll be a lot of people out there who've had that experience. So could you just talk very briefly about self-care and what midwives might do if they're in that situation at the moment?
I think one of the obvious things, I suppose, I don't know if it is that obvious, but it's actually finding somebody that you really trust to talk about. And if you're in a profession, it's usually somebody that you can trust professionally, that is going to provide a very, very safe place for you, where you can actually let your guard down. You can be authentically real with all your fears, all your anxieties, all your mistakes, and you can actually look at how that has affected you and how you are going to best take care of yourself. And it could be something like perhaps you need time out, perhaps you actually need to build into your day moments of quiet, moments of physical rest. Perhaps it's actually trying to wean ourselves off what is, accepted as ways of de-stressing, like the use of alcohol. That's not going to help in any way if somebody is reached that burnout stage. But it's all too easy to go in that direction. So finding somebody that you trust, that knows your profession, but is not going to report back to the system. How do I take care of myself? If I've got a young family, or if I've got an older family, or if I'm on my own, whatever the situation is, how do I care? How do I nourish myself? How do I find the times to actually do the things or have the conversations that are going to give me life, or to just share the fears that I have and the authenticity of me with somebody who cares and loves me and is going to say, you're all right. You're quite right in feeling what you're feeling. So I don't know if that helps.
Really helps a lot, Clare. Sue, we're almost finished. Clare and I only met recently, and we had a whole day together recently, and we just didn't stop talking. We're talking a lot on the phone and emailing each other. So I'm really enjoying these insights. So I just wanted to sum up a little bit. And Clare, it's been such a delight having this conversation with you. So I just wanted to sum up by reminding us that love is one of the greatest energies. And in bringing love into practice and the environment and supporting the growth of love in the family, midwives are really powerful, but they also have the possibility of negative power if we disrupt that love. In the resource pack, I've put a couple of articles on the importance of physiology as a basis to love and the attachment between mother and baby and well-being. And they are really important. So sorry, I've got my timer on because I lose track of time. And I wanted to say also that we have to remember that there's a uniqueness to every baby, every family. This is a life that will never be again. This baby will never be born again. And there is a unique potential being fulfilled. When I talked to Clare about it, she said, this is sacred, it's holy ground. There is vulnerability, but also possibility. And how does a midwife never lose that sense of awe? And finally, I want to talk about love of our work. I've now been in midwifery for a long time, and believe me, there have been times I wanted to give up. And always I find somebody who's been touched by the work of a midwife. And love of our work, I think, is probably one of the greatest gifts that we can have. Thanks very much, Clare. Sue, thanks very much for inviting us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Clare and Lesley. I have to say, I could probably listen to you chatting for another half hour at least, if not longer. I can imagine some of the things that you've kind of explored, and I've been busily scratching down notes for myself because I was thinking, I love the way you started, Lesley, by saying this. We can't be perfect. We've got things wrong, and it felt very much a learning pathway, the whole thing about love. And I guess for me, it's quite interesting to have gone through, because when I started training as a midwife many years ago, you didn't talk about loving the women or loving the babies, or you were a professional, and you had to be professional, and showing your emotions, your feelings wasn't really approved of. But yourself, why did we go into midwifery? We wanted to be with women and babies and families and help and be part of something magical and very special. And I think you've both summed it up so beautifully. And I think the other thing that hit me was when you were talking was about how many of our mothers, especially those very vulnerable and women going through terrible disadvantage, haven't been mothered themselves. And in a way, we have an opportunity as midwives to be the kind of surrogate mum. And I often think that if you could mother the mother, she's going to mother her child with our help, which really focuses it. And I also love this sort of idea of the black hole, but the energy, Clare, that you put that so beautifully, and it really highlighted what we will all feel when you can be in a team where every bit of energy is being sucked out, and then with another team that you have boundless energy to do everything you do. So thank you so much for starting the conversation. And we have people here coming in. Forgive me, those of you watching, I'm looking away at my other screen. I have two screens, as well as a Christmas tree, I might add. And we have one question, which I think you touched on during your discussion, from Kate Frith. Hi, Kate. Thank you for making the question. And she says, to both speakers, great topic, very interesting. I wonder what you think about having clear boundaries in order to grow our capacity to love and show compassion. Do you think it's possible to show love in midwifery without feeling burned out eventually? Which I think you touched on a little, but I don't know if you want to reiterate anything. Either Lesley?
Do you want to start with that one?
I'm happy to. How do you? I think it is possible. I think it is possible to. I think we go up and down. And I think it's actually to be forgiving of ourselves when we're not, and that not to let that destroy our practice. I certainly know in my own education, working with young students, there was better days than others, and I had the capacity to actually go back to perhaps a group of individuals or an individual and say, look, I got it wrong, I'm sorry. But then there were other days it was just flowing through me, the love for the students. I think also you spoke about boundaries. I think boundaries are very important, but I think there's sometimes boundaries, once you have learnt skills and are very well practiced, that the boundaries need to be a bit like osmosis. You're able to flow in and out of them. But you need to know what you're doing.
Well, as you were talking, Claire, I was thinking fluidity. It's funny you said the same thing. So fabulous.
Sorry.
And Sue, I was thinking too, there is a book called Moderated Love by Campbell, and I use this book as a basis for talking about moderated love in midwifery. And I talked about the midwife as a skilled companion who goes on the journey with the woman and her family, but she doesn't make that journey. And I think that's a really important differentiation, because it's like going up the mountain with somebody. They are climbing the mountain for themselves. You're not climbing it for them. And I think that differentiation is really important. And I do think that you need time off. I mean, I've had a lot of experience with talking about these boundaries with continuity of carer, because when you have good continuity of carer, actually the midwives in continuity of carer take clear time off to be with their family or relax or do whatever. So you have to be able to have some time off and have some recreation too. But I love the idea of osmosis and the fluid boundaries.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, we have Devi Hutagale. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Devi. And she says, I love all my clients and give all my best, of course. But in my workplace, I come from a minority nationality and I don't speak the native language, which most of my clients are native speakers from the region. Sometimes I get burnout when I got bad attitude from the client because I don't speak their language. What could I do to keep my head up when I face the situation? Thank you. And thank you, Debbie. That's a really good point. And I suspect I know what Lesley and Claire might come out with that, but I don't know.
I'll let Lesley go first this time.
It's a hard one. It is a hard one.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because there are ways of showing love without language. And I think clearly, I'm sorry, Sue, I've forgotten the name of the person.
Debbie.
And I think Debbie is clearly showing love in her work. I imagine that there might be a kind of frustration between Debbie and the people that they're caring for, because they can't quite get together through the language barrier. I can't say much beyond that. I think it is quite a difficult situation, but just to remember that we can communicate in many ways that go far beyond language. Claire, would you have anything to add?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think I totally agree that love can be shown totally without words. You know when you're in a loving presence, absolutely 100%. And it sounds like, Debbie, you are a loving presence. If you are consistently meeting that barrier with the language, which it sounds like you are, perhaps you need to talk to your colleagues and find a way of perhaps finding information that you know is going to be needed, and get that into whatever language is needed for the person, so that in fact, as well as you're giving them love. You're giving them the information that they feel they need, because probably I would imagine if they're not getting the information they need, then they'll be frightened. And that's what you're dealing with in the defensiveness, is the fear of the person. That's the only thing I can think of just now. I hope that's a wee bit helpful.
And I think it's Devi. Sorry, my words were a bit muddly, and I think it's an issue that many of us will face, perhaps not as explicitly as that, because we're all having to care for people for whom English or here is not their first language, and in other countries there are different people who don't speak that language, so the sort of use of other ways of communicating love is really crucial. Now I have two comments.
Sorry, interpretation services are really important in that situation. They're life-saving, actually.
Yes, if you have access.
Well, in the NHS there's always access by phone.
Yeah, I'm not sure where Devi's from, but that is important if you can get.
I'm so sorry. I'm being very geocentric. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, no, we have people from all over, but thank you for the end. That's certainly so. We should, where possible, we need to get translation or interpretation. Absolutely. I should have said that as well. Thank you. Now we have a comment from Ashley. Hello, Ashley, and thank you for making this comment. She says, wow, I was writing a reflective piece for an assignment on continuity of care. Well done you, Ashley. And reflecting on my feelings being heightened, warmth, satisfaction with continuity, and provided greater care. I hadn't thought of love, but it absolutely is that. Feel like I've had an epiphany moment as a student midwife. How wonderful. Isn't that lovely?
Thank you. I love it when I hear about student midwives writing about continuity of care, particularly their personal experience. It's worth, I think, getting in touch with some of the people doing national work on continuity of care.
I think Ashley might be in touch with you, Lesley, as well. And we have another comment from Irene Casatana, and she says, hi, year three student midwife here. The profession is hard. I do feel the love at work. That's great. From fellow midwives and clients too, it's not unusual that a woman tells me she loves me at some point and it fuels my love in turn. It's like a self-fueling circle of care. I love when that happens. Oh, now, Claire and Lesley, what do you think about this lovely self-fueling circle?
I think it is exactly that. I think that sums up beautifully what love is. It's both the giving and the receiving, and it's knowing how to do both well and healthily. Yes, absolutely beautiful.
Fabulous. We're going to have to keep all these comments. They're wonderful. Now I think this might be our last question, and this is Juliet Samuel from Essex. Hi, Juliet again. I think one of our regulars, actually, Juliet. Nice to hear from you. And she says, is it that the love is similar in that it occurs in the good and not so good, yet finding the capacity to realize that love is there, even though it meets highs and lows?
Claire, you and I had a conversation about this, because what you talked about is that there is always love out in the world.
Yes.
It's a matter of being open to it. And sometimes when we're in a dark place, we're not open to it.
Yes.
And I think it's being open to it.
Yes.
Actually.
So thank you, Juliet. That beautifully. Now now, as I always say, this hour is the shortest in the week. It just goes so quickly. And I could listen to Lesley and Claire forever, really, because they're talking about things that are so crucial to what we do and important for us to acknowledge, because it fuels, I think our participants have really articulated also well, because it feeds us as well as practitioners and people as well too. So thank you so much for all of the participants that have joined us this evening. And we have one more comment, and this is Jackie Couves or Couves.
Oh yes, Jackie. Hi, Jackie.
And she says,
Jackie is the loveliest midwife you could ever imagine.
Oh wow,
gorgeous.
That's something.
She was my supervisor.
Oh wow.
But she was also one of my midwives when I had David.
Oh wow. How fantastic. This is the whole circle.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, this is a good last word then. Thank you, Jackie, because she says, amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Lesley and Clare. You both articulated this topic so beautifully. And I couldn't better that. Couldn't better that.
And
that's wonderful.
Jackie, that's so wonderful.
And it's fantastic. Isn't it lovely to have all these warm, I can feel the warmth of love from our participants as well as our wonderful speakers. So thank you so much. So thanks to Lesley and Clare, also Angelo, who's in the background, making sure everything's recorded beautifully so that you can really look at this, share it with your colleagues. And also for those of you who like to have a 6 o'clock in the morning podcast on Friday, that it'll be coming out then. And thank you also to Paul, who's been feeding the question through on my other screen, which is fantastic. Resources will be available still and on Facebook on Friday. And I will say to you, don't forget, if you haven't booked for Scotland, if you want to come up to Scotland to Edinburgh, there's still 1 or 2 places free, but also you can just book and watch online. If you can't travel, that's fine. And that's fantastic. We've got fantastic sessions for you. And I'm hoping that you'll enjoy it if you come, or if you listen, or you're there. So in the meantime, take care. And we'll see you this time next week.